Good morning, and welcome to week 2 of the FIPP World Congress. I am John Sjöstedt, CRO here at FIPP, and hosting this session. This is a live event, so whilst we may not have dogs barking at the postman and family members randomly walking past in the background, you may hear the odd cough or door slamming, so apologies. For those of you who have not seen any of our other sessions, welcome to the fabulous Kenton Theatre here in Henley-on-Thames in the south of England. This is our home for the next month. This year's Congress is unique. It's the first time we've delivered an event of this scale purely online. The agenda for the event is accessible from the timeline on the home screen of the event portal. Here, you can identify which sessions you want to attend, clicking the star next to the session to save to your personal agenda. On the right of your screen are the Q&A and chat boxes. Please use these to ask questions to the presenters and hosts and chat to each other and interact with the sessions. Another key function is the meeting hub, also accessible from the timeline. This allows you to book meetings with other delegates and then hold meetings within the platform using the built-in video conferencing capability, all delivered via your browser. No need to download anything. Please do check your details are displayed correctly and update accordingly. Now, onto this session where we are discussing the e-commerce opportunity in a post-pandemic media industry. Tipsa is a Swedish tech company helping online media to monetize traffic with e-commerce that is embedded directly inside content. And joining us today is Jonas, Sjöstedt, founder and CTO at Tipsa. He oversees the technical operation and leads the vision of media monetization through inspirational commerce into the future. He's presenting what e-commerce brings to digital companies and how they can build reliable revenue models in the times after the global pandemic. And welcome, Jonas, and apologies for the pronunciation of your surname.
Thank you very much. I think you did really well.
Okay, thank you. First of all, quick question, just to kick things off. I'd love to know what the first product was that you ever sold through Tipsa.
Well, that's actually a tricky question. I was digging through my the order history, but I think it was a pair of headphones that we sold actually, or it must have been some sort of fashion item.
Right. Okay, well, over to you to talk us through your session.
Great, thank you very much. So, hi to everyone listening in. First of all, a little bit about myself. I'm Swede, born and raised outside of Stockholm on the small islands. I've worked in the internet industry for most of my career, and about 9 years ago, I co-founded Tipsa as a result of the influencer and blogger trends at the time. We quickly realized that the biggest revenue streams didn't come from the bloggers themselves, but actually from the big media houses, and so we worked more and more towards that type of customer group over the last couple of years. I'm a CTO of Tipsa, and I spend most of my time thinking about how technology can solve really, really hard problems. So I don't get a chance to meet up on these types of occasions, so I'm really excited to be here today. So what's going on now in the during the pandemic? Most of the pandemic amplified the movement that have already been there. And the media consumption is rising because of all the time spent at home. Unfortunately, the ad spend for some areas have plummeted due to economic uncertainties and changing consumer behaviors. For example, the travel industry is spending much less online now, but most likely this will bump back up again after the pandemic. The risk is, however, that some media will not survive this decrease in revenue streams. We see that fashion spend has never been this low as we work from home, but again, we see this slightly rising again. Areas that have increased, however, is cooking, baking, garden, and home improvement. And those are changes that probably will persist because people will most likely spend more time at home. Other changes that likely will persist after the pandemic is how we turn to e-commerce. So adoption has jumped in many areas such as food delivery. And I think this behavior will most likely cross-pollinate into other areas. So we will see a steady increase in e-commerce. And the fastest growing customer group right now is 65 plus seniors that finally has learned to click something home to their house and most likely they will continue to buy things outside of the food delivery that is their strongest area right now. Retail debt was before the pandemic, but has steadily grown now during the pandemic as we move towards e-commerce. But I don't think that there's anything that we can draw any conclusions on the purchase intent that I think is steady going forward. So apart from the pandemic, we know that once you turn to e-commerce, the convenience and reduced friction will make you stay to that e-commerce.
Hi, Jonas. So do you see any particular products or areas increasing outside of that because of the pandemic?
Well, from our perspective, we don't see any particular area that is increasing, but we do see a steady increase in sales because of our publishing partners is spending a lot more time on e-commerce as the revenue source. And so therefore we see a steady increase in the sales across the whole segments.
Okay.
So the interesting part is that publishers have an edge against commerce sites as they already have organic traffic returning to their sites. And many of these returners or visitors are returning several times a week. And publishers have a strong media brand that people trust. They have editors that curates the world to make it relevant to the readers that come there. Now, you as publishers can leverage that brand and capitalize on consumers directly where inspiration strikes. So how big is this opportunity, you might ask? Well, I'd say pretty big. The numbers that we see ourselves are staggering. We see a 3 to 5 times increase in profit compared to affiliate programs for the same products. And Tipster has over 30% average commission for the first half year in 2020. And if you compare that to average commission paid out from affiliate programs, that's around 12%, I would say. And the conversion rate is also really fine. It's around 1.5% end-to-end. And as a comparison to that, the end-to-end conversion on affiliates should land something around 0.2%. So our friends here at FIPP has made this bold statement, and I think I definitely agree that e-commerce is predicted to become one of the main revenue streams for the coming times. And some of the consumer behaviors that we see is, first of all, that consumers want to buy on their terms, meaning that the experience should be smoother than smooth. So this means payment should be smooth. We have all the obvious things as fast website, mobile first, great image content, etc. But it also means that you're expecting that the buying options that you can see in these channels should be similar to what you see in other channels. And the experience should be unified. So this means that if you have the brand experience that you see in other channels than the normal brand channels should be the same. The purchasing options, the delivery options, the loyalty programs, etc. Consumers expect them to exist across all of the channels where people are visiting. Another interesting trend is the sustainable e-commerce. Obviously, that is more sustainable products, near-shoring or near sourcing. But the interesting part is that e-commerce is by design many times more sustainable as goods is traveling on a commute on their way to consumers. And as a comparable, you might sit in your car alone traveling to the store to buy something, which is not very sustainable then. Returns is, however, a big problem when it comes to e-commerce. And I think you as publishers could have played an interesting part here because the returns is many times because of lack of information about the products. And publishers could really help out in this area. Another interesting trend is digital to physical. So, I mean, obviously we've seen the physical to digital transformation previously, but now we see the physical stores is actually bringing in digital trends, such as treasure hunts in the stores, personalization, and we can see all these kind of things moving into the physical world as well. So if you think about e-commerce adoption on your end, I'd say that there isn't one way to run e-commerce as a publisher. So you need to find your approach. There is content commerce where you embed buying options inside of articles, curated stores, which is a marketplace curated by the editors, the fashion editors that already has built up their trust towards consumers. We see customer loyalty programs where the publishers are actually using their subscriber club to bring great offers to them. And obviously we see the mobile, where publishers are integrating commerce into their mobile platforms, or where there are pure players that actually are bringing e-commerce into their apps, where they see themselves as publishers. So here are a couple of real-world examples of how commerce can blend with articles. We see publishers such as BuzzFeed is integrating purchases into their articles. We have Dagens Nyheter, Swedish news magazine, that are bringing fantastic offers into their subscribers club. And we have the fashion magazine InStyle, which you see a little video of here in Germany. So they're making a good profit from selecting and publishing the products into their articles. Another example is live video shopping. It's long been a dream, but we actually see this happening now. H&M and Bambuser has teamed up and has some fantastic results with 6 times engagement and 4 times add to cart rates. And you can really feel the closeness as shopping is happening together with influencers on these platforms. We also see Instagram launching their checkout technology in the US over last year, and a few selected brands were offered to be part of this trial. And this mega influential platform clearly wants in on the share, and we can understand why. And I would say that the next steps here would be to bring this to influencers that have a far wider audience with a much more loyal crowd. And I think we will see more of these proprietary networks bring the shopping to their networks. So how does it work behind the scenes? Well, I would say that the best commerce actually happens where you bring the products to the consumers. It's like you put a store on the high street rather than in the woods. So this means that product prices and availability should be fresh and available right at the fingertips inside of the articles. The add to cart functionality, the order capture, payments, etc. should be right there in the same environment where readers are go to get inspired. And everything else, that fulfillment, the connecting to the sources where the products are delivered from, etc., should be behind the scenes. And,
Jonas, what's the optimal team to have to work with e-commerce?
Well, obviously that's a complicated question, but I would say that you should definitely have the same size of team and the same effort as when you run your media or ad sales. But more specifically, I would say that you would need your commercial lead, you would need a commercial editor or a team of commercial editors and a tech team behind it. So there's no magic in automated revenue streams from e-commerce. But if you make this investment, you should be a good return on investment.
Excellent. So you have a similar sort of structure as you would in most other departments, but just with slightly different skill sets, I'm guessing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So is content commerce just another affiliate solution? Well, in some areas you could think of it that way, but there are a couple of key differences. So I've tried to illustrate here a little bit how the media industry works at the moment. So you have the retailers sitting in one island and you have the publishers on another island. The retailers are working really hard with channel strategies to bring traffic and visitors to their island. And the publishers are likewise working together with retailers and brands to make their profit, their revenue sources. But the problem is that you really need to move the visitors from one end to the others. So where publishers are fighting really hard to get visitors to their site, publishers are actually sending their visitors away. So this means that a profit for a publisher actually means a lost visitor. So there isn't really more ways of recapitalizing on that visitor once you actually contributed that sort of effort of moving it away to the retailer. So how we see this is that you actually bring parts of your channel, or like the retailer gets like virtual channel where their products are getting transferred into the publishers. But the nice thing here is that by making the commerce happen on the publisher website, you can recapitalize on that visitor over and over again because it's not lost traffic. Plus, you have the full control over the user experience when something is happening inside of your own platform. So implementing content commerce, maybe we can say that the implementation is more complex compared to affiliates. But in the long run, it allows a publisher to build a sustainable and reliable, and most important, crisis-proof monetization concept. And obviously, as I said before, content commerce should be regarded like ad sales as a business for media, which needs to be operated and maintained through internal resources. And now, what is the end game for affiliate marketing then? Well, the marketplaces and retailers only have affiliate programs when they need the traffic. When they're big enough to dedicate the terms, they don't need to have the affiliates anymore. An example of this is the dominance of Amazon that has chosen to halve the commission in the affiliate programs. And obviously that's hurtful for all the media depending on Amazon. And Zalando choose to completely cut off their affiliate programs, which obviously was very hurtful when that happened. So e-commerce as a form of monetization has seen steady growth regardless of the pandemic. And in fact, the growth we saw during the first months has jumped 4 to 6 years ahead if the rate would have been continued similarly to the last few years' growth. And we believe that the way forward is to diversify your revenue sources to not become dependent on any one of them, and to cooperate with industry players. Don't try to solve all the problems yourself. There are great technology out there that can help you solve your revenue and technology targets. So please go ahead and use them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonas. That was great. It's a really good insight and overview, and I think it demystifies a lot of stuff around e-commerce that perhaps people where they haven't investigated or haven't looked at new revenue streams where they're now being forced to. So you've just turned 9 years as a business, and you've been there for the whole ride. So what are the sort of main changes that you've seen in Tipster in that time?
Well, first of all, we were a small startup, and at that point you had to do everything yourself, and that was also a time where we were way ahead of the market. So it was a bit challenging to be that far ahead of distributed commerce and content commerce. At that point, most of the media, they didn't really understand that this was a way of monetizing, and retailers, they were quite happy with their own retail store. But over the last couple of years, competition has become much harder, and publishers have also discovered that e-commerce is something that's tricky, so they need help with that. And also they have turned to that as a much more interesting revenue stream, as ad sales has plummeted in many areas. And then from a company perspective, obviously growing this quickly has been a bit of a challenge. When we were first a small tiny family where you knew everything about everything inside of the company, and now we're turning into more specialization and diversification inside of the company, and you actually don't know really what's going on everywhere, which as a founder could sometimes be frightening, but it's a delight to see that we have these fantastic people on board that actually creative and creating lots of solutions for difficult problems.
Okay. I know it's a question that everybody's asking everybody, but it's always interesting to hear. So how's the pandemic affected you in a working practice, other than the obvious things of staying at home? And obviously, of course, you're a Swedish company, so you as a nation approached it quite differently to most of the rest of the world.
For us, I mean, first of all, we were a distributed company already before with several offices, and we were used to having video conferences and conversations over chat programs, and we didn't really have anything that was dependent on a physical location. So for us, it hasn't been much of a change. I think initially people were actually quite happy to work distributed and working from home, but and I mean, then we were sort of reaping the fruit from things that we had built up as we met physically. We actually had a big kickoff just before the pandemic kicked off, and we're sort of riding on that collaboration wave. But I think now, having been distributed for half a year, I think it's really proven to be like the physical meet is super important.
Yes, I think we all agree with that. So the sooner we get back to it, the better. I also wanted to ask you. You talk about, in terms of the way that your two routes to market, you talk about surfaces, and obviously, you know, we can typically a surface is a network or is a website. Are there any limitations in terms of what you would define as a surface for Tipster?
Not really. I mean, most of our implementations have happened on the web, but we see now more being implementing Tipster inside of native mobile, and we've done implementation over voice commerce. So this Google Voice, we have implementations on that. So I would just welcome anyone that wants to do TV commerce or any more exciting 3D commerce or anything like that. Our technology is there to be integrated into any of these technologies.
Yeah, you also talk, the other thing I was reading, which was interesting, was about comparison sites as well and marketplaces. Could you just talk to us a little bit more about how you interact with something like a comparison site?
Well, we have some clients that are price comparison, or others that are more product listing or product discovery sites. And they already have lots of product information on their websites, which is similar to what a marketplace would be. The lacking part is the actual transactional part of it. So what we do then is that we match up the products that they have on their website with the inventory that we have, and then we make that inventory viable inside of that platform. So either it's sort of like a quick checkout solution, or it's a fully integrated e-commerce solution with a shopping cart and all these kind of things that you would expect from a regular marketplace. But the end solution is very similar to a regular marketplace for these players.
Right, okay. I'm going to go to some questions we've got for the audience. So I have one here. Can affiliate solutions work for B2B publishers? If so, what advice do you give them?
So, well, yes, obviously, I mean, we could work together with any types of products. I mean, the trickier products are the more things like travels, or things where there's only one product or a limited number of products for a certain time period and stuff like that. What we tend to work with is more the types of products that are physical. And I mean, B2B is, to us, very similar to B2C. So to me, it really wouldn't be a difference for that. I mean, B2B products tend to be more complicated many times. So therefore, it requires a lot of information about it. And that's why Tipster is so great, is that you could build an enormous amount of information where you could add these buying options inside of that content. So I would say for some B2B, it's actually a really good fit.
Excellent. I hope that answers the question. Another question for the audience. So which verticals, really niches, work best for publishers in your ecosystem? I guess that breaks down to B2B and B2C as well. But
we have historically focused most on products that are very inspirational, like fashion, home interior, beauty, that sort of stuff. But we also work together with more what is called agricultural products, or we have had electrical bikes. So it really doesn't matter. I think it's more about the publisher, that if they can drive enough inspiration around the subject, I think that could definitely then turn into e-commerce. I mean, the more challenging ones is, for example, news site, as it's hard to link a sale to a news article. But we've also seen some of our partners working with that, where they sell books on that subject. So we actually have one partner that is actually automatically matching a news topic to a book. And that actually means quite good sales in that area as well.
Okay, on to another question. To what extent do you suggest e-commerce should be integrated with content on publisher sites to be successful, i.e. rather than placed around it? So obviously we talked about the integrated within the news content. So just if you could elaborate on that, that'd be great.
Yeah. I mean, that's a bit of I feel very biased here, because I'm super into putting the buy buttons inside of the content. So we've done some side-by-side tests to see how does it work when you put the buying options on the side or inside of the content. And the interesting part is that whenever you put the content on the side, it tends to be regarded by the brain as you've sort of taught this banner blindness. So you sort of omit that part of the content. Your eyes is really looking at the middle section of the website. So that's why we see a much higher conversion. I mean, we see lots of these examples where you have a shopping site that's completely on the side. It might have the same look and feel, but you can really see that it's happening outside of the content. And that's almost and a similar extent as we saw before, where you move the traffic away from the actual content, where people come and returning to look at that content. So to me,
has that always been the key principle at Tipster, or have you played with lots of different models, or has it always been embedded content?
We've always believed in embedded. So our first product was a one product shop that you could put inside of a blog. And that was our first vision on how it should be, because we believed in this blended experience, and that commerce should actually add value to the content rather than being something that you feel as a consumer that is there to make money on you. So the content should feel that as it's really recommended by the publishers, and not because they make money out of it, but because they really like it. So it needs to be authentic. And you cannot just sprinkle all these random products inside of an article, but the article and the product really needs to relate to each other. So that's why we see these automated solutions is sometimes a bit tricky, because the products themselves, they don't really belong with the text and the content in the article.
Okay, thank you. You touched on this earlier with one of your slides, but one of the questions that's come in is how publishers are going to compete with Amazon. And you talked about the affiliate deals and the commission rates being cut and so forth. But how can this all sit together?
So you mean how can publishers compete with Amazon, basically?
Yeah, I know. That's a sort of very broad question. It's something that somebody from the audience has answered. And I suppose what I'm really asking is, I suppose what you were talking about was the fact that a solution along the lines of Tipster is much more valuable to the publisher because they're not getting effectively stung by Amazon or whatever other third party that's taking a much higher commission.
Well, first of all, I believe that publishers has a great edge, because visitors are coming there to get inspired. They're spending their leisure time on the publisher sites, and so they're coming there freely and they're returning many times. And I think that they could leverage that to introduce relevant commerce. Whereas Amazon is obviously a destination when you know what you want, but for anything else, when it comes to inspirational or when it comes to things that you didn't know you needed, that's where publishers has a fantastic edge. And I think that they're just sitting on this, as I said, a gold mine that they could start capitalizing on if they do it really well.
Yeah. Well, at FIPP, we always talk about multiple revenue streams. So I think never Never is a time better. And on that, with the pandemic, have you, without getting into financials, but have you seen a massive uptake? I mean, you talked about how the business had changed and how you dealt with it differently, but have you seen a huge increase in business?
Well, it's almost sometimes it almost feels embarrassing because the struggle that others have.
Yeah, sure.
We've seen a great rise many times because I think publishers are reacting on this ad sales going down, and they really see that they need to find another revenue stream.
Yeah.
And then e-commerce is a good place to go for that. So for us, it has been really successful, and I think that we've seen the trends that we've seen has also jumped for us, and I think that the publishers have made decisions to start kicking this off much faster than they might have done otherwise.
Well, long may that continue for you guys in these terrible times. I've got two more questions for you. Can you provide examples of a B2B publisher that you're working with today? That's from the States.
Yeah, actually, let's see here. We don't have any strong B2B players at the moment. We work mostly with the B2C then. And to be honest, I don't really know of a B2B player at the moment that we're working together with. I think we've done it in the past, but
okay.
Yeah.
That sort of leads into my last question that from the audience anyway. Can you give us an example of a publisher that is doing really well in this space, or a couple of examples of people that are doing it extremely well in your opinion?
Yeah, so one that I would like to pick up, because they've sort of done almost everything right, is the InStyle, and that's the same group as owns L.de and harpersbazaar.de, so German publisher. They're really doing really well. Then we have a Swedish player called Dagens Nyheter, which is also doing really well. They're selling all kinds of stuff to their subscribers. So I would like to really emphasize those doing a great job. And I
did have them in my brief actually, but I wasn't going to dare to pronounce the name, so I took those out. So I thought I'd let you talk about them.
Yeah. And what they've done, and if I will lift InStyle then, is that they have a dedicated team that really understands what it means to be a commercial editor. And they also have a team of technicians that are building this solution into their core of the website. And so they've spent a lot of time, and over time, they have really excelled in this area. So if you want to see how that's implemented, I think there's a good place to go, InStyle.de.
Okay, thank you. Well, look, thank you very much, Jonas. I think that brings things to a conclusion. We've had quite a few questions from the audience. That's been absolutely fascinating, and I hope that's given everyone a much better insight into the opportunity. And we'd like to thank you very much for your time and for coming to see us today.
Thank you very much, John.